Finding a worm in your apple is annoying. A hole in your sock is just frustrating. But stumbling across a tomb filled with headless skeletons or a perfectly preserved brain from thousands of years ago, that's the kind of thing that sticks with you forever. Some discoveries don't just make you uncomfortable. They make you question reality itself. Like mummies frozen mid-scream, skulls impaled on stakes, or ancient corpses buried with iron spikes through their hearts like some real-life vampire horror story. And just when you think it can't get any weirder, history throws a curveball. Decapitated gladiators, cursed artifacts, and things so bizarre that even scientists are left scratching their heads. If spooky, unexplained, and downright creepy things keep you up at night, well, you might want to click away now. But if you're ready to face the eerie side of history, here are 15 mysterious discoveries that will seriously freak you out. Number 15. The scandalous secrets of Littlemore Priory. For centuries, whispers of corruption swirled around Littlemore Priory, a medieval convent in Oxfordshire, England. Then, in 2015, archaeologists uncovered something that turned whispers into cold, hard truth. The remains of 90 people, including a 500-year-old skeleton of a woman buried face down. That was no accident. Being buried like that was a known punishment for accused witches or women deemed sinful. Even more unsettling, an infant's remains were found between her legs. Historical records paint a grim picture of the priory. The prioress, Catherine Wells, was infamous. She allegedly had a child with a priest, sold off sacred relics for cash, and ruled through intimidation. Nuns who crossed her were beaten or locked in stocks for weeks. Eventually, church officials intervened, stripping her of power in 1517, but the damage was done. By 1525, the priory was shut down for good. Was the face-down skeleton Wells herself, or just another victim of the priory's dark history? That answer is lost to time. Number 14. The world's oldest cold case. If there were an ancient crime database, this would be case number 001. In 1984, archaeologists in Cima de los Huesos, a cave in Spain's Atapuerca Mountains, unearthed a 430,000-year-old murder victim, making it the oldest known homicide ever recorded. The evidence? A fractured skull shattered into 52 pieces. Once reassembled, it revealed 2 nearly identical wounds on the forehead, injuries that weren't accidental. The blows were deliberate, and there were no signs of healing, meaning the victim was struck right before death. Someone wanted this person dead. Badly. Even creepier, the body was dumped in a deep cave shaft, alongside the remains of at least 28 other Neanderthals. Was this a prehistoric crime scene? A burial pit for victims of violence? Or something darker? Evidence of an ancient serial killer? We'll never know the full story, but one thing is clear. Even 430,000 years ago, murder was already a thing. Number 13. The Screaming Mummy. Mummies are unsettling enough on their own, but one in particular is nightmare fuel. Meet Unknown Man, E, better known as the Screaming Mummy, a royal corpse from Egypt's Valley of the Kings, buried with his mouth wide open in a permanent, agonized scream. Unlike most Egyptian mummies, his burial was a mess. His body wasn't properly embalmed, his organs were left inside, and he was wrapped in sheepskin, which was considered ritually impure. That was deliberate, a sign that whoever buried him wanted to erase his soul from existence. Some believe he was cursed for treason, possibly plotting against his father, Pharaoh Ramesses III. Others think he was buried alive. But the infamous scream, that might just be natural. As a corpse decomposes, the jaw can drop open, creating the illusion of horror. Still, whether his agony was real or an accident, this mummy's final expression is pure terror. Number 12. To serve man. Cannibalism in history isn't shocking, but what happened in Herxheim, Germany? That's something else entirely. Dating back 7,000 years, this Neolithic site belonged to the linear pottery culture, one of Europe's earliest farming societies. Archaeologists expected to find the usual ancient village remains. What they didn't expect was the butchered bodies of at least 500 people. Their bones were carved, boiled, and scraped clean, showing clear signs of mass cannibalism. This wasn't about survival. This was a ritual. Some believe people voluntarily came to Herxheim, possibly as sacrificial offerings. Others think they were captured, slaughtered, and eaten in massive ceremonies. Even stranger, the sheer number of victims suggests this wasn't local. People from distant regions may have been brought here specifically for consumption. Whatever happened, Herxheim wasn't just a village. It was a Neolithic house of horrors, where the line between ritual and feast blurred into something truly terrifying. Number 11. The pet cemetery of the Chiribaya culture. In a desert south of Lima, Peru, archaeologists made an unexpected discovery: a 1,000-year-old pet cemetery, proof that even ancient civilizations deeply cherished their animals. This wasn't some random burial site. 43 dogs were carefully laid to rest, each in their own individual grave, surrounded by blankets and food offerings. These weren't strays. They were beloved companions, likely used by the Chiribaya people to herd llamas. Some even believe they were a distinct breed, now called the Chiribaya shepherd, which may have direct descendants today. The dry desert air naturally preserved the remains, allowing researchers to study these ancient dogs down to their fur and bones. DNA testing is even underway to see if their bloodline still exists. The find is more than just archaeology. It's a testament to something timeless. Civilizations rise and fall, but the bond between humans and their dogs, that never changes. Number 10. Medieval maternity and the tragic coffin birth. Around 1,300 years ago, a woman in Imola, Italy, died just weeks before giving birth. But when archaeologists uncovered her remains, they found something deeply unsettling. Her fetus had been pushed out after death, a rare event known as a coffin birth. This happens when gases from decomposition build up inside the body, forcing the fetus through the birth canal. As if that weren't tragic enough, her skull had a hole from trepanation, an ancient form of surgery where a hole was drilled into the skull. This was done across cultures to treat head trauma, migraines, and even spiritual afflictions. In her case, researchers believe it may have been a desperate attempt to save her from eclampsia, a life-threatening pregnancy condition. Whether it was a medical procedure or a ritual, one thing is clear: this mother and her unborn child met a heartbreaking fate. Number 9. The Terracotta Army. In 1974, farmers digging a well in China's Shanxi province unearthed a clay soldier. What they didn't know was that they had just stumbled upon one of the greatest archaeological finds of all time: the Terracotta Army. Buried alongside China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi, this massive underground army consists of over 8,000 intricately sculpted warriors, complete with chariots, horses, and even acrobats. Each figure was uniquely detailed, meant to protect the emperor in the afterlife. His actual tomb remains untouched, with legends describing rivers of mercury and unimaginable treasures sealed inside. Scholars are hesitant to excavate it, fearing toxic traps or structural collapse. But one thing is certain: Qin Shi Huang wasn't taking any chances, even in death. And let's be real, with China's history of wild discoveries, who knows what else is buried beneath his mausoleum? Number 8. Ata, tiny human or alien. When a 6-inch skeleton was discovered in Chile's Atacama desert in 2003, the world went insane. With an elongated skull and fully formed bones, Ata didn't look human. She looked like an alien. For years, theories ran wild. Was she a mummified extraterrestrial, a lost miniature species? But DNA testing debunked the alien myth. Ata was human. She had indigenous Chilean ancestry mixed with European DNA and suffered from severe genetic mutations, affecting bone development. Despite looking like a 6-year-old, she was likely stillborn or died shortly after birth. Ata's condition is so rare that scientists are still studying her DNA, hoping to understand the mutations that caused her dwarfism and skeletal malformations. She wasn't an alien, but she remains one of the most bizarre and tragic human remains ever found. Number 7. Injured zoo animals in ancient Egypt. Before the pyramids, before the pharaohs we all know, there was Hierakonpolis, an ancient Egyptian city where the wealthy elite kept exotic pets as status symbols. But their version of a prehistoric zoo wasn't just for admiration, it was brutal. Archaeologists found buried baboons, elephants, and even a hippopotamus, proving that 5,000 years ago, the Egyptian elite were already keeping wild animals in captivity. But many of these animals showed healed fractures, meaning they were injured while being captured or restrained. Some likely broke bones while struggling against ropes or cages, but were kept alive long enough for their bodies to heal. This means ancient Egyptians weren't just hunting these creatures, they were domesticating them for display. Number 6. The Vampires of Sozopol. Finding a skeleton? Creepy. Finding a skeleton with an iron rod stabbed straight through its chest? That's when things start feeling really wrong. In 2012, archaeologists near the coastal town of Sozopol, Bulgaria, unearthed 2 skeletons with metal stakes driven through their hearts. Their crime? Allegedly being vampires. See, back in the day, people in the Balkans took no chances with the undead. Some believed the dead could rise again, so they made sure that never happened, by literally pinning corpses to their graves. And this wasn't some one-time superstition. A year later, another so-called vampire was found in Priory, impaled with a plowshare. In fact, over 100 of these bizarre burials have been discovered across Bulgaria, some dating as far back as the 1st century AD. One theory suggests that one of the Sozopol vampires was actually a 14th century nobleman named Krivich, who, in life, may have been a feared pirate before becoming the town's mayor. If true, his reputation literally haunted him in death. Even centuries later, his body was still treated like something out of a horror movie. Number 5. The Headless Gladiators of York. Most people expect skeletons to have, heads. But in York, England, archaeologists stumbled upon something much more disturbing. A Roman-era cemetery filled with more than 80 decapitated bodies. What made this discovery even weirder? The heads weren't just missing. Some were tossed into graves like afterthoughts, while others were carefully placed on the skeletons' chests, as if arranged with purpose. At first, researchers thought they were dealing with executed criminals or even human sacrifices. But then they noticed something unusual. Many of the remains showed signs of intense physical training, deep battle scars, and incredibly strong upper bodies. These weren't ordinary civilians. These were gladiators. One skeleton even had a bite mark from a large carnivore, possibly a lion or bear. That confirmed it. These men weren't executed prisoners. They were warriors who fought for their lives in brutal Roman arenas. DNA tests later revealed that many weren't even British. Some had traveled from as far as Syria, likely forced to entertain bloodthirsty crowds. In life, they were champions of the arena. In death, they were dumped in mass graves, and their identities were lost to time. Number 4. The site of the Sand Creek Massacre. Some places carry history that's too dark to ever be erased. One of those places is the site of the Sand Creek Massacre, one of the most horrific atrocities in American history. In 1864, A peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho encampment in Colorado was attacked by U.S. soldiers under Colonel John Chivington. Around 150 people were slaughtered, most of them women and children. And the violence didn't stop there. Soldiers scalped the dead, mutilated bodies, and even took human remains as trophies. Chivington called it a military victory, but his own men, disgusted by what they had witnessed, came forward and exposed the truth. A congressional investigation condemned the attack as a disgraceful massacre, but Chivington was never charged. For over a century, the exact location of the killings was lost to history. Then, in 1999, archaeologists finally uncovered the site, confirming just how brutal the event had been. Number 3. Skulls on stakes in Sweden. In 2009, a construction crew in Sweden was digging near the Motala Ström River when they hit something unexpected, an ancient burial site unlike anything seen before. What made it unique? Well, instead of skeletons neatly placed in graves, there were human skulls impaled on wooden stakes. Dating back 8,000 years, this is the earliest known evidence of people mounting skulls on stakes, and no one really knows why they did it. Even creepier, the jawbones were missing, and 2 skulls still had pieces of wood driven through them. Was this some kind of ancient display of war trophies? A burial ritual meant to honor the dead? Or something much, much darker? Adding to the mystery, the site contained remains of an infant's skull, further complicating any theories. Whatever the reason, it seems these people had no problem putting their enemies, or possibly their loved ones, on full display. Number 2, the Heslington brain. Brains don't last long after death, at least they shouldn't. But in 2008, archaeologists in York cracked open an Iron Age skull and found something that shouldn't have existed, a 2,600-year-old preserved brain. Nicknamed the Heslington brain, it belonged to a man in his mid-30s who had been hanged and then decapitated. Under normal conditions, soft tissue decomposes quickly, especially the brain, which is mostly water. But this one? It somehow survived intact, though it had a strange, tofu-like texture. For years, scientists had no idea how it stayed preserved. Then, recent studies suggested that an unknown acidic fluid seeped into the skull, stopping decomposition. But here's the problem. No one knows what that fluid was or where it came from. This is one of the best preserved ancient brains ever found. What do you say about it? Number 1. The whistling terror bullets. Slingshots? Pretty harmless, right? Well, not in ancient Rome, because apparently Romans weren't just about winning battles. They wanted to psychologically destroy their enemies too. Archaeologists in Scotland discovered 1,800-year-old Roman slingshot bullets. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. These bullets had tiny holes drilled into them. At first, no one knew why. But then, a researcher's brother, who happened to be a fisherman, pointed out something interesting. Holes in fishing lures make a whistling sound when cast. So, scientists tested the bullets, and sure enough, when launched through the air, they made a high-pitched, shrieking noise. Yep, the Romans basically invented terror bullets. Imagine standing on a battlefield, hearing hundreds of piercing, ghostly whistles flying toward you before they slammed into your body at lethal speeds. This wasn't just warfare, it was psychological torture. The fact that Romans were using sonic warfare nearly 2,000 years ago proves one thing: they were way ahead of their time. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.